Obstürmt oder steigt,
und die Sonne uns lacht, der Tag glühen weiß, oder eiskalt die Nacht. Bestaunt sind die Gesichter, doch wo ist unser Sinn, ja unser Sinn? Es braucht unser Tanzen im Schuldin dahin.
Welcome one, welcome all, welcome to another exciting episode of Tales of Heroes Training Tuesdays here on the Sound Strategy Network, www.sound-strategy.net. I am Bridger, and with me is my significant co-host Rogers. Welcome to the show.
Hooray, I mean something this week.
Yes, more than nothing, indeed. Last week you were theoretical. This week you're significant. Significantly theoretical. All right, so today we are talking about the Wehrmacht, the war machine itself, one of the first two original factions in Company of Heroes. We're going to give you the overview and all the special attributes of this particular faction and the ins and the outs and why you should play them because they are awesome. My favorite faction here since Company of Heroes launched and the ones that I've spent the most time with. We're going to go over all the units and talk about the ones that are specific to the Wehrmacht faction and what makes them special. So, first, let's jump right into talking about how they tech. We talked about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, in the last episode of Training Tuesday's overview, we talked about the British and how they tech up using their giant buses, how they call in a new crazy HQ, mobile HQ, to get the next level of tech. And their officer and their lieutenant and their command tank are sort of their gateways to new tech. Well, the Wehrmacht have 4 strict tiers, more like a traditional RTS game, where you have to upgrade at the HQ. You start with Tier 1 units, so let's take a look at those. We've got our... here we are. We've got the Pioneers that you start with. Those are your construction units and your sort of light capping units that you can use to just go cap things that are undefended. There's only 2 of them, though, so keep in mind about the Pioneers that they can be outclassed by enemy engineers and basically anything else. Yeah, actually, it's safe to say everything can outclass the Pioneers except maybe a captain. Then you've got your Bike. Your Bike is your mobile reconnaissance unit, and you get that right at Tier 1, and it also is a very good sniper killer. It has large bonuses against snipers. It can also reveal snipers, so use it to chase down and kill enemy snipers. It also has the largest sight radius in the entire game. I can see way over here because I've got a Bike sitting this way. Next up is your Volksgrenadiers. These are your basic early game military unit. These are young men and old boys in the German homeland, as well as, conscripted others, as they say. That's the People's Army, the Volksgrenadiers. They are weaker than most other units, like the Riflemen or an infantry section in general is going to be stronger than the Volksgrenadiers, and they do get better if you get the Veterancy and other things, but we'll talk about that later. Then you got your MG42. For details on the MG42, we did a whole episode on machine guns, and it is awesome. It's the backbone of your Tier 1 strategy most of the time. The Sniper is the other. It's the side bone of your... Is there a side bone to the back of your strategy? Like, if you have backbone is the machine gun, like the boots on the ground are the Volksgrenadiers, and the side bone is the Sniper. This analogy is going nowhere fast, so we're going to go on to the next set. Sniper is your premier anti-infantry unit, by the way. When you go up to Tier 2 in the Wehrmacht, you get access to 4 new units from the Kriegsbarracks. So the Wehrmacht quarters is the very first building you can build. The Kriegsbarracks is the second one that you can build. So here's the 4 new units that you get access to. The Half-Track is a very useful multi-purpose unit. It allows you to reinforce in a radius around it. If you put units inside, it actually has 2 machine guns, one in the front and one in the back, that will both become active when you put units inside of it. And it can also be upgraded to Flammenwerfer and Walking Stuka. We'll talk about that later. The better version of infantry is the regular Grenadiers. These are not young men and old boys. These are the backbone of the German army. These are your standard army units. And even though there's only 4 of them, they do cost more than your Volksgrenadiers, and they fight better. So they also have even better veterancy than the Volksgrenadiers. So a squad of Grenadiers can hold their own against an unvetted, rifleman or infantry section, for example. Next, we have the mortar team. The mortar team that the Wehrmacht get access to is quite good. It has only one special ability, and that's smoke, and we'll talk more about that later. 50mm anti-tank gun Pak 38. This is one of your primary anti-armor assets in the game, and we'll talk more about how the Axis deal with armor threats in the future, but you get that one very early at Tier 2. You get access to the Pak 38. It has a special camouflage ability, which we'll talk more about later. Tier 3, you get access to the Puma armored car, which specializes in anti-infantry capabilities. It can also be upgraded to get bonuses, to get a different main gun that is much better against light vehicles and much worse against infantry. So if you're really dealing with, you have nothing else that you can use to deal with an M8, sometimes you want to upgrade your armored car, your Puma armored car. Officer, this is a very interesting unit compared to all the other ones that the Wehrmacht get access to. He's more like a caster unit, a traditional RTS. He can't really do anything himself, but he does get 3 special abilities, and we'll talk more about him when we get to talking in depth about these units. Next up is the Nebelwerfer. This is your go-to, we strapped all of these mortars together and launched rockets out of them unit. So if you like mortars, but you want more gun, as it were, then you get your Nebelwerfer, which is a more powerful artillery variant than the regular mortar. Last in the Tier 3 that comes out of the Sturm Armory is the Stug. Stug 4, I guess you could say. The Stug is basically an extension of your anti-tank gun. The main gun on it does okay damage against infantry. I mean, it does more damage against infantry than the Pak does, but its primary role is anti-armor, and it has some of the toughest frontal anti-armor in the game. It's very difficult for enemy tanks to penetrate its armor up front. Lastly, we have the Tier 4, the giants of the war machine. The Ostwind is one of the single most amazing anti-infantry units in the game. It fires one shot about every 2 seconds, and almost every single shot takes out one guy and damages another. It's just very good to clear up enemy blobs really quick with an Ostwind. Next up, we've got the 3-man squad of Knights Crossholders. These guys are your elite infantry. We talked about how you got your regular green infantry and the Volksgrenadiers. Your Grenadiers are sort of your regular infantry. Well, your Knights Cross are your super elite infantry. These guys have been there, they've done that, they've gotten the t-shirt, they're wearing 6 of them, and they have Sturmgewehr 44, so you gotta watch out for that. So, next up is the Panzer IV. I should point out that your Knights Cross are primarily anti-infantry. And we've also got your Panzer IV, which is a good all-around tank. It's a lot like the Sherman. It's decent at killing infantry, and it's good at killing tanks, and it has medium armor. So that's a very good all-around tank. It's also got decent speed. The Panther is exceptional against enemy armor. It's okay against infantry. It's not terrible, but it's no Panzer IV or Sherman. But it can be upgraded to get better against infantry. So that is the entire war machine, Wehrmacht army here. Now that we've talked about the overview of the Wehrmacht, let's talk about how they get veterancy. Veterancy is earned by killing with all of the other factions, but the Wehrmacht actually purchase it by going to the Kampfkraft Center here. It's a very cheap building, costs 100 manpower, and what they do is inside of this little building, they build a teleporter that sends soldiers from the Eastern Front 1,000 miles away in Soviet Russia all the way over here, because they know what the hell they're doing, because they've been fighting for 3 years. But over here, these guys are green Volksgrenadiers going, what the hell's going on? So, veterancy has 4 different categories: veteran infantry, veteran support units, veteran vehicles, and veteran tanks. It comes in 3 levels for each of those categories. The first level costs 30 fuel, the second one costs 50, and the third one costs 70. So you can see it will spend quite a bit of your fuel in order to get veterancy in level 3 in a single category, much less more than one category. However, I would highly recommend getting at least 2 or 3 levels of vet on various things throughout the game. So first, let's talk about infantry veterancy. As you can see, infantry veterancy is fairly standardized. The Volksgrenadiers, Grenadiers, Stormtroopers, and Knights Cross all get passive regeneration as their level 1 vet bonus. What this means is that if your unit, if an individual within your unit is down to, let's say, 1 hit point, it'll take him about 5 to 7 minutes to heal up passively once he's at vet 1. If he doesn't have vet 1, you instead have to pay to heal that squad by getting a field medical kit. That becomes available at tier 2 on all of your infantry units. You have to pay 30 munitions per squad to heal it. Now, that can sometimes save your ass if you're in extended fighting behind green cover. That field medical kit can be awesome. But if you just want your units to be better for the next time they go into combat, you'd rather not spend the 30 munitions. You'd rather just have them all sitting at level 1 veterancy so that they are passively healing all the time. When you send them out capping, they're healing. When they're retreating, they're healing. When they're in battle, they're healing. It's good time. So, next up, the Grenadiers and Stormtroopers, who are basically the same kind of unit. The Stormtroopers are a more elite version that you get from the Blitzkrieg tree. They get the Elite Armor. Elite Armor also goes to some of the support units as well, and what it means is that against small arms fire, you take less damage and shots are less accurate when directed at you. So that is very good to get. Level 2 veterancy essentially means all of your units are more survivable. Your Volksgrenadier gets a very small incoming damage bonus. Incoming damage is only 95% of what it normally would be. The Knight's Cross gets some suppression bonuses and some more damage bonuses, received damage bonuses at level 2 as well. So level 2 veterancy essentially makes all of your infantry more durable against small arms fire, bullets, for all intents and purposes. Now, the last level of veterancy, as you can see, is also consistent across all different types of infantry, and it gives you 20% more health, 120% maximum health. It's very, very useful because at the end of the game, there's so much coming in. There's artillery, there's tanks, there's mortars, there's machine guns, there's snipers. More health is always better. And that that third level of veterancy, even though it's very expensive, it's also very powerful because that gives you a lot more survivability on the battlefield. Next up, let's talk about support veterancy. Support veterancy applies to these units. You've got your machine gun, your sniper, your mortar, your Nebelwerfer, your pioneers, and your officers. Basically, anything that has dudes not in a vehicle and isn't a frontline infantry combat unit, you can kind of consider a sport unit. The only exception to this rule is the PaK-38, the AT gun that the Wehrmacht get. It is considered a vehicle for veterancy purposes. Don't ask me why. But this what you see sitting in front of you, these are your support veterancy. And as you can see on the screen here, support veterancy does a lot of different things. It gives regen to snipers, officers, and pioneers. It gives bonus accuracy and reload speed increases to the machine gun, and it also gives speed bonuses to the Nebelwerfers, like running along a road goes really fast once you've got level 1 vet. So if your Nebelwerfers have to get out of the way because enemies are incoming, a level of vet will certainly help them do that. Mortars get cooldown bonus, and that's pretty much it for Tier 1. Tier 2 gives elite armor to a bunch of things, some better health. Again, Tier 2 is almost always about survivability. If you get vet level 2 on your stuff, it usually gives it some kind of bonus to survivability. And level 3 lets your machine gun see further, which makes it more deadly. Your pioneers get bonus health, and the mortar gets a bunch extra damage, and all kinds of bonuses here that are actually kind of offensive, really. So, that is support veterancy. All right, let's talk about vehicle veterancy. Vehicle veterancy applies to these 4 units and the Flak 88, which is not pictured here because I went Blitzkrieg, but it's a defensive 88mm artillery / anti-tank piece that you can get if you go defensive. So that also applies in here. So let's talk about these. We've got the bike, the half-track, the Puma, and the AT gun. Now, as you can see on the screen here, the general rule is that you get incoming damage bonuses at Veterancy 1. Basically, they take 85% of the normal damage once they become level 1 veterancy. So that increases their survivability a lot. The half-track actually gets minus 75% incoming damage. So it does a really good job there. At level 2, they pretty much all get health bonuses, except for the Puma, which gets a bonus to its line of sight. And at Veterancy level 3, they all reduce their, well, actually they don't all do anything. They get penetration reduction on the motorcycle, the half-track, and the flak, damage bonuses in the pack, and the Puma. So this is fairly straightforward, and it's not the greatest veterancy in the world, but it's better than it used to be. And just a note, some places on the internet, if you're looking up veterancy, like on Game Replays, there's some out-of-date articles that mention that many of these units get bonuses to received accuracy while moving. Most of those were basically stripped out because they made these units very difficult to hit and therefore very difficult to kill while they were on the move. The Puma was basically invulnerable while it was moving, so they fixed that. So those bonuses are pretty much gone. All right, that is vehicle veterancy. All right, lastly, let's talk about veteran tanks, your tank veterancy. Tank veterancy applies to the Stug, the Panzer IV, the Ostwind, the Panther, the Sta from the Blitzkrieg tree, as well as the Tiger from the Blitzkrieg tree. The King Tiger does not benefit from veterancy in the Kampfkraft Center. It has its own unique flavor of suck. Let's put it that way. So, what we have here is a fairly consistent set of bonuses. In the first level of veterancy, all of these tanks get a 15% reduction to damage done to them. So essentially, they only take 85% damage that they normally would take, which makes all of these tanks significantly more survivable. What it means is, normally a Panzer IV and a Sherman, if they just faced off head-to-head, those would be about even. The Panzer IV might have a slight edge in the odds of winning, but a Panzer IV with a level of vet is now going to have a significant advantage because it takes a lot less damage than it used to. The second level of veterancy on 3 of the tanks, the Stug, the Panzer IV, and the Panther, all get a guy pop out the top to use the machine gun, the MG42 that's on the top of the tank. It makes all of them much better at killing infantry. Every once in a while, it'll also even suppress infantry, given the right circumstances. And it's kind of really necessary for the Stug to be decent at killing infantry. So if you want your Stugs to be decent at anti-infantry capabilities, try to get them to Vet 2, and they'll be much better. The Ostwind gets some health bonuses, and the Tiger gets some health bonuses at level 2. They don't get any extra anti-infantry killing power. At level 3, the Panzer IV, Panther, Stug, and Sta all get armored skirts. And you'll visibly see little armored bulkheads added to the side of the tank, which basically decreases the amount of penetration odds for most anti-tank type weaponry. It also decreases the damage done by those weapons. There's a whole lot of different modifiers for all different kinds of allied units, but as a general rule, it makes them much harder to hit and much harder to damage. The Ostwind is the only one that doesn't get any really interesting modifiers. It just gets accuracy plus 40%. And your Tiger, even though it doesn't get skirts, it gets kind of the equivalent. It gets received penetration modifier of minus 25%. So there's a lot harder to penetrate a Tiger at Vet 3. So that is all of the different types of veterancy. Here's what I would recommend the aspiring Wehrmacht player get throughout the course of the game. You should always, always, always get level 1 vet on your infantry between 5 and 10 minutes into the game, because that is just going to make your infantry go into battle with much more health than they otherwise would, and it could easily turn the tide of various battles. If you go into battle with full health instead of 75% on all of your infantry units, that's just so much better. I would also recommend getting Vet 2 infantry by the time you're about halfway through the game. It's going to make your Grenadiers, your Stormtroopers, your Knights Cross, and your Volksgrenadiers just a good deal more survivable when, you know, all of the anti-infantry stuff comes out on the field. Your light machine guns and Brens and all kinds of stuff that just makes them so much better. Vet 3 infantry it's not an automatic thing you should do every game, but it's probably something that you're probably going to want to do in 75% of the games that you play, because most of the games you're going to play as Wehrmacht, you're going to have a lot of infantry on the field, you're going to have a lot of Grenadiers and Volks and Knights Cross, and you're going to want them to have that extra infantry health. So when you can afford it, usually later on in the game, to give yourself just a little bit bigger boost, get level 3 infantry vet. So support vet is really nice. And if you're going like a tier 2 defensive strategy with lots of infantry and support units like machine guns and mortars, then support units veterancy is pretty good. You should probably get level 1 and level 2 if you're really going for a deep infantry support strategy. But it's not an automatic buy every game. The veteran vehicles is very hit or miss. If you, it's probably something that's more useful in games where your Puma strategy is doing really well. However, packs also benefit from it. So if you've got a Puma and a pack, if you're going tier 3 as a general rule, as well as tier 2 or if you're things like that, then veteran vehicles can be good. If you've just got some extra manpower and some extra fuel here to spend. And oh, I forgot to mention, the veteran support and veteran vehicles are actually slightly cheaper than the tanks and the infantry. That's a reflection of these being considered slightly less useful by the player base. So vehicles and support units are cheaper. They're only the 20 at the beginning as opposed to the 30. I think they're cheaper as you go up as well. Vehicle veterancy, very situational. If you feel that you've got enough, packs, Pumas, half-tracks on the field in order to take advantage of the veteran vehicles, like if you're using a half-track strategy to reinforce and you're using packs as your primary anti-vehicle, get a level or two of veteran vehicles. It's pretty good. If you're playing in a big team game that's lasting a long time, an extra third level is not that bad. Tanks. Now, tanks and infantry are the two big ones. They're the ones that people get most of the time. A single level of vet. If you even bring one of these tanks out onto the field, exception maybe just the Austrian, but if you bring a Stug or a Panther or a Panzer IV out onto the field, you should have at least one level of vet. If they stay out on the field and you build a second one, you should get a second level of vet when you can afford it. The question is, if you build a tank, should you get a second tank or should you get another level of vet? My typical strategy is to get a Stug or a tank and then a level of vet, and then another tank and then another level of vet. And I try to keep the tanks alive, and then that way they get better and better as time goes on. So that's just a general rule of thumb. Obviously, many things are going to be situational. So that is veterancy, and I hope that enlightens you, because I know when I started playing the game, Wehrmacht veterancy was... Well, number one, it's very difficult to say. I mean, say that 5 times fast. But number two, it is also not documented anywhere easily available. What does it say? Oh, call in Eastern Front veterans. Oh, what does that mean? That doesn't mean anything. That doesn't tell me what that does. That's a stupid tooltip. But I know they were probably changing it a whole lot, and it's impossible to list them all there. Still would have been nice to have a better idea of what that does. So, there's your veterancy. Now, besides these buildings and units, there are a few other things that are unlocked by leveling up through the different tiers in the Wehrmacht teching system. When you get to Tier 2, your Volksgrenadiers have the ability to shoot a Panzerfaust, which is an anti-armor, a one-time anti-armor ability, and you have to pay for it every time. So 35 munitions will get you about half damage on a Jeep, or a third damage on an M8, for example. Another thing that comes available at Tier 2 is this healing kit button. That's available on pretty much all of your infantry units, including Pack 38s. Anything that has infantry in it is going to have the field medical kit, and that costs 30 munitions to heal up a unit all the way to full. They move slower when they are healing over time, so keep that in mind. If you're sending somebody to quickly, you need them there to turn the tide of this battle, don't hit the healing button, because they will walk at about half speed. Next, Shreks become available on your Grenadiers and your Stormtroopers. The Panzer Shreks there, they cost 75 munitions, and they become available at Tier 2. So if you get Stormtroopers before Tier 2, you won't be able to buy Shreks. But Tier 2 usually comes pretty quick. It's pretty cheap, so you usually have that. However, the MP-44 Sturmgewehr assault rifles that are available on the Stormtroopers and the LMG 42s that are available on the Grenadiers are not available until Tier 3. So you have to be, proactive. If you need an anti-infantry solution on your Grenadiers, you need to tech up a little bit in order to get them. Let's see. I'm sorry, I missed one at Tier 2. MP40s become available on your Volksgrenadiers at Tier 2 also. And the last thing that becomes available at Tier 3 is you get a Flammenwerfer available at Tier 3. That's an upgrade on your half-track that turns it into a dual-wielding flamethrower man-killing machine, as it were. But you can't do that until you get to Tier 3. Even though it's a Tier 2 unit, you need to get to Tier 3 before you can actually use the flame upgrade. Finally, Tier 4 gives you the Walking Stuka upgrade, which basically turns your half-track into a mobile rocket battery. You also get the officer artillery available at tier 3. So your officer, his artillery that is really, really powerful, observed fire, that costs 150 munitions, is not available until tier 4. Okay, so now that we've covered all those bases, let's talk about the Volksgrenadiers. As we said, they're kind of your general purpose, slightly weak infantry unit. They are basically long range because they all have sort of bolt action rifles, except for the leader here who has an MP44. But otherwise, they're all sort of very weak. Long range is their style. However, once you upgrade them with MP40s, the entire squad gets MP40s, and that costs 50 munitions, and it makes them close quarters killing machines. They become glass cannons, however. Even though they put out a lot of damage, they also get shredded fairly easily, unless they have veterancy. So remember, if you can get them up to Vet 1 or 2, actually 1 only gives them healing, but Vet 2 or 3 will give them some survivability bonuses, so that they can survive the charge into melee. Another cool idea is to use one long-ranged Volksgrenadier squad to initiate a combat, and then charge in with the other one, because unless your opponent is microing specifically, all of the units will target the first thing that they see, and they'll keep shooting at that until it's dead. So you use one squad to come over here and say, okay, I'm gonna initiate combat over here, and then I bring my other MP40 squad after everything starts shooting at this squad, and he's sitting in cover over here, getting shot at, being, okay, this is fine, I'm good at long range, and then you bring stream in over here. I wish I had the ability to draw like John Madden on the screen. That'd be great. I've looked all over the place for something that will let me do that in game. I can't find it. If anybody knows of something that let me draw on the screen while I'm in a game, tell me. It'd be awesome. So yeah, that's a cool idea that you can do with MP40 Volks. Alright, so the bike is your general purpose recon unit. You'll notice it has a ridiculously long line of sight here. It can see huge chunks of the map. It also moves quite quickly. Unlike the Jeep or many other units, it cannot reverse. If you tell it to go back, it'll instead turn around, which makes it much harder to keep the bike alive. It also has less health, but it is also cheaper than the Jeep or other recon units. And it moves pretty fast. It moves extra fast on roads like all other units do. If we bring him over on the road, he'll really move. But you have to be very careful to try and keep him alive. It does have a machine gun on there, which does pretty decent damage, actually more damage than the Jeep, I think, to infantry units. It can actually take out a engineer squad if they're not careful. Look at that thing move on the road. That's what I'm talking about, except it goes in a ditch for some reason. What are you doing? Anyway, the bike is very good at taking out enemy snipers. One thing that you can do is, if you see a sniper sniping at your units, immediately charge after it with the bike. But do not engage. I'll show you why right now. Alright, so now what we're going to demonstrate is proper use of snipers and using recon units specifically with snipers and to kill snipers. So Rogers is going to now start advancing here with a sniper, and he's going to use a Jeep, which I can't even see. That sniper does not have the line of sight to see this. The Jeep does. So there's his Jeep. But I have a counter-sniping weapon, and that's this bike. So I can use this bike to try and hunt his sniper. There, now I see him. He's going to hit the retreat button. Now, I'm not going to click on the sniper, because if I click on the sniper, the bike will stop. And I don't want the bike to stop. I want this bike to keep chasing. So I have to keep micromanaging the bike and telling him to click, keep going. Sometimes the bike takes stupid turns that make him miss. There we go. And oftentimes, it's worth chasing an enemy sniper all the way into their base in order to just eliminate them as soon as they stop like that. So sometimes it's like, okay, that's 180 manpower for my bike that I just lost, but my opponent just lost 340 manpower for that sniper, so that was an even trade. It also chased the sniper away from my battle, which meant that my guys probably came out on top when the sniper wasn't there. So remember, if you're trying to chase down a sniper with a bike or a Jeep or any kind of recon, you don't want to click on the sniper itself, because that will make the unit stop and shoot. You want to click next to it, keeping your unit just a couple of feet behind it the whole way, and that will be the key to taking out enemy snipers. You also can utilize the long line of sight on your bikes and your Jeeps to increase the range of your snipers and your machine guns, which can fire further than they can see. Now, the Wehrmacht sniper is pretty much the same exact thing as the American sniper. He gets some bonuses in that make him more often. For example, he fires 40% faster when you get tier 3 on him, so that just makes him an awesome killing machine. But he does have a couple buttons down here. Camouflage. Now, you'll notice he just went into camouflage mode. Enemies cannot see him unless basically they are A, right on top of him, or B, some kind of reconnaissance unit. So for the Americans, that would be a Jeep. For the British, that would be a recon section. And for the Panzer Elite, that would be a scout car can reveal snipers. So a sniper will usually seek cover before he fires. And some people will find that very annoying, but one of the main reasons for that is when he fires, he will reveal himself temporarily. And the time before he re-cloaks is going to increase after every consecutive shot. So if he's just shooting over and over again, he's going to be exposed for longer each time. In addition, that exposure time is also based on the level of cover he is in. If he's in negative cover, it's going to take him a very long time to cloak. If he's in neutral cover, it's going to take him a pretty long time to cloak. If he's in at least yellow cover, he's going to cloak pretty fast. And if he's in green cover, he's only going to be able to be shot at for about a second the first time. And maybe that'll slowly increase, but he'll get back under cover very quickly. So before you let loose with your sniper, try to get it into at least yellow cover so that it can cloak faster. And that way, your sniper will be more protected. The other thing that'll keep your sniper more protected is this special hold fire button. Try and keep the camouflage and hold fire keys like in your mind. Just try and remember what they are and always use them as much as possible. When you put your sniper into cloak, don't just, run him through a safe area in cloak just because you want to always keep your sniper cloaked. Uncloak him to get him where he's going, because he runs a lot faster when he's not cloaked. Then cloak him when you think you're getting close to an enemy. You can also, then you want to keep him on hold fire most of the time because you'd rather not let your opponent's sniper just kill him. If you don't know where your opponent's sniper is, then keep him on hold fire so he doesn't just open up against an enemy that he can't defeat, for example. And then when he's on hold fire, you can give him specific targets by clicking on them, or you can say, okay, I've got a machine gun right here. I don't need to keep him on hold fire. He can just blast away and take him off hold fire with a hotkey or with something else. Now, another really cool thing that you can do with your sniper is you can use it as a reconnaissance unit. We talked about how the bike is great because it's got such a long line of sight. The sniper's not great because it has such a long line of sight, but it is great because your opponent won't know that he's being reconned. So some cool tricks you can use like this is use this to get into the enemy's base and then drop artillery on them with a Nebelwerfer or something else that requires a line of sight, for example. So that's the sniper, guys. I hope you guys enjoy that tip. Alright, so let's take a look at the 2 upgrades that are available for the half-track. As you can see, the flamethrower upgrade for this half-track is the Flammenwerfer. Now, it's pretty expensive, but it is, like most other flame-based things, very good at killing infantry in cover. It's also decent at flaming buildings. You can use it to take out machine gun nests if you come around the side and things like that. Now, the problem with both of these upgrades, both the flamethrower and the rocket one, is it's no longer available for transporting infantry quickly around the map. You can still, I believe, reinforce next to it, but it does lose its transport capability. So let's see what it does. You can see it does a good deal of damage there, and if you line this up right, you can get it shooting at 2 different buildings simultaneously, which is pretty cool. We're flaming that, and we're flaming this. And that one's going down real quick. So you can see the fire does pretty decent damage against buildings. But this is not the kind of thing you'd normally do with the Flammenwerfer. You'd probably keep it back and use it to kill a bunch of infantry in cover. Or take out a machine gun or something to that effect, as long as it doesn't have armor piercing. Ah. So the Flammenwerfer, very situational. It's not something you're going to build every game. You're not even going to build a half-track every game. But it does take out Jeeps pretty well. Look at that. So the more powerful iteration, you might not even worry about this until Tier 4, but this is called the Walking Stuka. This is, I think, 150 munitions upgrade for the half-track here, and it has a timed rocket barrage that is incredibly strong. And the closer, like most rocket barrages, the closer you do it, the more concentrated the attack. But let's watch this here. Firing the rocket barrages. Boom. 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 Now, these may not look like much, but they pretty much instantly suppress everything that gets hit by them and does a lot of damage to infantry. And it has this cooldown that's about, I think, 90 seconds to start. As it goes up in Veterancy, just like the Nebelwerfer, it reduces the cooldown time to a minimum of 60 seconds, so 10 seconds each Veterancy level. So you can have these things firing every minute, which in the course of a combat can be very devastating. Now, this is really interesting. Did you notice, Rogers, that this almost seems like one side of the Flammenwerfer does a lot more damage than the other?
Yeah, it kind of seems like it. I don't know what's.
I don't know if it was a distance thing or not, but so there you go. Those are the 2 upgrades. Again, very situational. You're probably going to use the Flammenwerfer a lot less because it is a very fragile unit. As far as, you know, if you're charging this in to get the close range for the flamethrower, it's not going to really stand up to sticky bombs, and even just bars are going to do some damage to it. But this damn walking Stuka is just so powerful, and it's so awesome, and you can just keep firing it for free once you've upgraded it. It's so worth getting later on in the game if you need to take out a lot of infantry or emplacements or dug-in units or anything like that. Anytime there's, you know, machine guns or anything holding you off. It's great against the British specifically. So that is the walking Stuka. Fear its might and wrath. Alright, the Pak-38 is very similar to the American AT gun, except instead of an armor-piercing ability, it has the ability to camouflage. Much like the sniper, this camouflage comes back automatically faster in the higher levels of cover. But when it's firing and it's in camo, the first shot it fires when it's in camouflage does more damage and more penetration, I believe, as well than normal shots from it will do. In addition, every consecutive shot that it fires will keep it uncloaked. It has to be not firing for a while in order to recloak. So if you want to get that extra critical hit from the ambush in the camo, you have to wait a while, which means you might have to put it on hold fire or something. As a general rule, though, it will stay camouflage unless there's some kind of vehicle for it to kill, whether it's a jeep or a tank or a half-track. It will not fire at infantry while camoed. At least that's the information that I was told. But if you need to put it on hold fire because you're waiting for that, you know, M10 to just come a little bit closer before you take it out, there is a hold fire button for the Pak-38 as well. It's a pretty good anti-tank unit, but like most anti-tank guns, you need to keep it protected by something like a Panzerschreck squad of either grenadiers or stormtroopers. Just keep those nearby so that if an enemy tank tries to flank it, maybe it takes 1 or 2 shots, but once a tank flanks it, he can just play Ring Around the Rosie with the Pak, and the Pak can never turn fast enough to hit it most of the time. So that if you have a Shrek squad right nearby, that tank can't play that game because it's going to get shot in the ass by a Panzerschreck. I don't know. They might hold their own. It is doing some damage.
It's like the pitter-patter of rain on the side of a house.
It is. It's working. I need the pop cap.
Taking a while.
For the next segment. Damaged engine. He's not going to be able to drive away, Klaus. Oh man, I'd love to see what the walking Stuka does to these jeeps. They're gonna take out like.
Oh my god! Come on, kill it! Oh my god, that was 20 jeeps firing at a Flammenwerfer for like a minute solid.
Yeah, it took a long time, but those jeeps, they know what's
They're
up.
amazing.
Let's see what goes on here.
Oh my god!
No, no, no! Stay. Stay, I want to see what happens. Oh, Jesus! Wow.
Allied War Machine, quick! No, it doesn't work! Damn it! Alright, time to rebuild the Jeep army.
Alright, well, that's all he's got. He can't do anything else. Okay, what's next? The Pak-38. Alright, next up in the Krieg's Barracks we have the Grenadiers. These guys are your, like we said, generic infantry, anti-infantry unit. They've got rifles, and then I think the squad leader there, again, has the MP-44. But they are, again, mostly a longer-ranged unit. However, They have 2 potential upgrades here, and they also have a grenade. Throw grenade ability is a much more powerful ability than it used to be. It's pretty on par. If you've got a cluster of infantry, throwing that grenade will damage or kill at least 2 or 3 of them. They've got the Panzerschreck upgrade, and they've got the light machine gun upgrade. Each of them costs 75 munitions, and you can have 2 total things in the squad. So you can have 2 Panzerschrecks, 2 LMGs, or a Panzerschreck and an LMG. Panzerschrecks are very good against tanks and vehicles. They are also pretty damn good against buildings. So if you need to take out emplacements and bunkers and things like that, like the British have, if you can sneak a Panzerschreck squad nearby, they can make short work of those emplacements. Now, the LMG-42 is not like a normal machine gun. It doesn't have to have a setup or anything like that. However, unlike the Browning automatic rifle, it cannot be fired on the move. So if you want your grenadiers to do well and they have an LMG in the squad, you need to pick a spot of cover, get them there, and leave them there, and then the LMG will open up, and it can actually suppress enemy units depending upon the number. So the more enemies that it's shooting at, the higher level of chance that it's going to suppress them. But it is going to do pretty good damage. Now, you could, if you're kitting out a squad of grenadiers or stormtroopers, you could go with a Panzerschreck and an LMG, or 2 Panzerschrecks or 2 LMGs. Like, if you're going to have 2 squads, you can make one of them super anti-tank and have them both, carry 2 Shreks and one carrying super anti-infantry. I don't usually like to go down that road, because what it means is if the enemy manages to damage your double Panzerschreck squad and you have to retreat it, suddenly you've got no anti-tank presence on the field. Same for if they start to, if they focus fire on one of your grenadier squads that has your LMGs, then you have to retreat that, and the only thing you have left is a squad with 2 Panzerschrecks. Well, now you're in trouble, right? So I tend to go with one of each in each of my grenadier squads so that they're all sort of capable of everything they need to do. And then if I need to take out a tank right quick, I try to get both squads there as fast as possible. The last thing I should say about Panzerschrecks is they get much, much better at close range in terms of accuracy. They pretty much penetrate and damage no matter what range. They almost always will penetrate as long as they hit. But the long-range accuracy on Panzerschrecks is very low. So you want to try to get at least to medium range before you fire it. And close range, if you can, will do lots of damage. They really do.
Get him! Get him! Wow, they can't hit him.
Oh, there it goes. Oh, if you had right in the hedge. Ouch. All right, now we're going to talk about the mortar, another thing you get at Tier 2 at the Kriegsbarracks. The mortar is a good multi-purpose unit. It's great for taking out units in buildings. It's great for taking out emplacements that the British can set up and other things like that. But it has, that's a very obvious uses of it. Something I should point out is you'll notice that it has a minimum range, obviously, but that this is when you shoot at its minimum range, it's a very tight circle of where the shots are going to fall, and the further away you get, the wider that circle gets until it's very, very wide indeed. So using it at its maximum range is going to take a long time to take out, an MG nest or an enemy emplacement, but the closer you are, the more tight that those shells are going to fall. Now, another cool thing that the mortar can do is probably an underutilized ability of the mortar is this smoke barrage. Let's say, the game is very close and I only need to cap this point for a few seconds to win, because the enemy on the team only has a couple of victory points. We've seen that countless times in the Tales of Heroes. You just need a few seconds of victory points in order to win. Well, that's one way that smoke can help. So we're going to barrage this point with smoke, and then we're going to use a lowly pioneer squad to go and cap the point. And even though it's being guarded, they can't hit me because I will be inside of the smoke. So here comes the Pioneer Squad slow and steady. Another good thing to know about the way that smoke works is that anything that fires into the smoke, out of the smoke, or through the smoke gets basically very, very poor accuracy. So the Pioneers are going to try and cap this, and you've got bars right there, and he could even use suppression fire. It doesn't matter. He can't hit me with this smoke here, and it lasts for a good long time. So as long as I keep the mortar on its smoke barrage, I can just sit here and cap. I haven't hardly taken any damage. Now, there is one thing that is not affected by the accuracy modifiers of the smoke. Actually, 2 things. Artillery and fire. I can fire from inside the cover of the smoke and burn shit out of these riflemen. Although they went out of the cover of the smoke in order to get close enough to fire. That wasn't the perfect example, but That's one way you can use as either the Axis or the Allies. If you have something that fires a smoke, you can drop the smoke right on a machine gun, for example, and then charge in with flaming pioneers or flamethrower engineer squad, and just make short work of that emplacement or that machine gun team, because fire doesn't care that smoke's in the way. That's a mortar. So let's talk about the Sturm Armory. The first option you get in the Sturm Armory is the Puma STFKS 234 armored car. I don't remember what that stands for. Sturmgewehr or something. He took out all the vowels. I can't read it. Anyway, the Puma excels at killing infantry. It's quite good at killing infantry, especially if you kite. If you're facing riflemen, oftentimes you'll see them charge the Puma. That usually means they're trying to put a sticky bomb on it. Just keep backing up. Just keep backing up. Back up, back up, back up, back up. Just like this. You know, if you don't have time to, like, babysit and watch it because you need to look at the other side of the map because something is calling for your attention right now, oh my god, artillery, get us out of here, then what you can do is queue up a bunch of reverse orders. Okay, riflemen are charging me down this road. Okay, I'll just tell them to back up, 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 and back up. And now I can go look over here, and he'll continue doing that, and I don't have to keep track of him. I know he backed up all the way into my base, and he's safe now. So, using shift commands to kite with your Puma is a really cool strategy and something you're going to want to use a lot. Now, Puma's obviously not so good against static anti-tank things like AT guns or, you know, tanks with a turret that can follow you, and you can't kite them because they're going to have the same range. However, the Puma does have the option of getting a 50mm gun, anti-tank gun on the top. Now, that gun's not going to be too great. It's basically only going to be good for shooting rear shots at, you know, a Sherman or a M10, but it'll also do pretty decent damage against an M8 or the British light tank. I think it does a tiny bit of damage to that. The T-17, however, I don't think it does very good damage at all, because that's a light tank. That's not really an armored car anymore. Anyway, that's the Puma. All right, let's talk about the Officer here, ladies and gentlemen. The Officer is just a single unit, and he has a few of caster type abilities. He doesn't fight by himself. He's got a Luger. It does nothing. But he does have some very powerful artillery. Some of the most powerful artillery that the Axis have available to them. It's called Observed Fire, costs 150 munitions, and it's quite devastating. Let's just use it on a house over here and watch the fireworks. Now,
it's also Tier 4, Adam.
Oh, yes, it is Tier 4, correct. Thank you very much. It does have a preset range, so it has to be within a certain range of him, and it can't fire into the fog of war, so you have to be able to see. So let's target the house here, and we'll see how this 81mm mortar barrage from off-map happens. And oh, it almost took the house out. But you can see, if you had something in that house, it probably wouldn't be in the house anymore. So Tier 4, that Officer Artillery, is really cool. But the things he comes out with is supervision, which you can order him to supervise a specific structure. So I could say, okay, supervise the Panzer Command, and anything built at the Panzer Command will come out faster. So let's try building a Panzer IV, and we'll wait until the officer comes, and you can see the progress meter speed up when he comes to observe it. He's here to watch. And there he goes. It's sped up. And you can visibly see that it seems to be building about twice as fast as normal. Now, that's not a super useful power. You wouldn't build him just for that. The thing that you would build the officer for is his propaganda war type ability. It's the force retreat ability. This is just like the propaganda war ability that is in the terror tree, except that applies to more than one squad, and the officer's force retreat applies to only one squad of enemies. However, it does only cost 50 munitions instead of 100 munitions, I think it is, for propaganda war. So, going into a battle, and your infantry are outclassed, well, maybe you want to get rid of just that ranger squad. Bam! Force retreat on the ranger squad, rangers run away, and now you have superior odds. So the officer's pretty cool for that purpose. So if you're facing an enemy that has a lot of infantry, or a particular, like a Vet 3 rifle squad that's just bone in your side, Shiv. Why am I always on bone? Side bone, backbone? I don't know. Anyway, skeleton. Let's continue. All right. Next up from the Sturm Armory here, we have the Nebelwerfer. The Nebelwerfer is like a mortar if you took about 6 of them and stuck them all together and put rockets inside. It's really awesome. It's got this scary ass whee sound. It's like a terror weapon. And it has a pretty damn long range, but you see the farther we get away, the larger these shots are. So we're going to try and drop it way over here on this Jeep that we can see and see if that does anything. It seems unlikely that it will. It'll have too big of a spread. However, we use it closer, it would have a pretty decent spread. Now, the thing that the Nebelwerfer is most especially good at... Oh, now I can't see it anymore. The thing that the Nebelwerfer is most especially good at is against infantry blobs, because each of these rockets does a huge amount of suppression. So if you use a Nebelwerfer right before an attack, and you drop it right on a bunch of infantry as they're setting up behind cover, then they will all get immediately suppressed and kind of crawl out of cover, because that's what suppressed units do for some reason. So the Nebelwerfer is great for taking on, you know, clustered infantry, or even just one infantry squad if you need to suppress it and do some damage to it. It also does damage over time. As you could see, there was some fire there that was left over. So it's also good for taking out things like emplacements, like the British emplacements or machine gun nests or things like that. So makes very good artillery for the Axis, and if you buy those upgrades, the veterancy upgrades for the support units, it fires faster and faster with each one. So this recharge time that's normally 90 seconds goes down to a minimum of 60 once it's at Vet 3. It also moves a lot faster at Vet 1. So it's got some cool bonuses, it's good artillery, good time. Alright, so next we move on to the infantry here. We do still have one thing left in the Sturmarmy to talk about. We'll get to that in a second, though. These Knights Cross holders come at Tier 4 from the Panzer Command building here, and they are your super elite, basically the best infantry in the game, man for man. These infantry are better than anything else. They come with infantry heroic armor, which already has bonuses, and they also have a lot of health. They also, by default, have a passive regen twice as high as the normal regen that you get at Vet 1 with all the infantry. When you get Vet 1 with the Knights Cross holders, they now are at triple the regen of normal infantry. So they will regen in about 2 or 3 minutes max if they take some damage. They are also armed with MP44s, and they know how to use them, I should point out. They are very good, very highly accurate. They do a lot of damage. If you get these guys to Vet 3, they are unstoppable infantry-killing machines. Seriously. They are ridiculously good. They are also ridiculously expensive, and they don't come out until Tier 4. But if you're having infantry problems, and it's late in the game and you're at Tier 4, you have no excuse for not building these guys. Don't build another set of Grenadiers and give them LMGs. Build Knights Cross holders. Now, the one weakness of Knights Cross holders is that they don't have any anti-tank capabilities to speak of, at least not until Veterancy level 1. When they get level 1 vet, they will have access to the Panzerfaust, with the same Panzerfaust that you see on the Volksgrenadier squad. But, you know, it's not the best. I mean, you can only use it once every about 20 seconds, and it costs 35 munitions each time. It's not a great solution. It's, oh man, we almost killed that, you know, Sherman. We just need to hit it one more time and the Shreks are out of range. Better use the Panzerfaust on my Knight's Cross. That's the kind of thing. Or, oh crap, we don't have any anti-tank here because they just killed our Shreks, or they had to retreat. Quick, let's use the Panzerfaust on our Knight's Cross and our Volks. That's how you'd use the Panzerfaust. So you can see I upgraded the Vet 1 and now they've got the Panzerfaust. They also have assault grenades, which is very interesting. You have to choose, I believe, an enemy target specifically. It won't let you just target the ground like normal grenades. And I think each of them throws one. So you actually get 3 grenades for the price of 50 munitions instead of like 1 grenade for the price of 25 or 30, which is what usual grenades are. So that's your Knights Cross holders. Use them, love them, they are awesome. Rogers pointed out that the assault command actually is a sort of a timed command where they just keep throwing grenades until you either give them a maneuver, a move to cancel, a move order or an attack order or something like that, or they just run out of the time. So I think they like throw grenades for like 10 seconds or something, and they just keep throwing grenades until you tell them to do something else, basically. So that's the assault grenades. All right, here we are. The tanks, the German tanks. Germans have some of the best tanks in the game. The Panzer IV comes out of the gate as a very good, probably the best medium tank in the game. It's my favorite tank in the entire game. Everybody else like Tiger or Panther or all this other stuff. No, screw it. The Panzer IV is amazing. It's good against infantry, it's good against tanks, it's got good armor, and it's cheap and easy to get, right? You've also got the fact that when you upgrade it with Vet, it gets that machine gun on top, it gets skirts on its sides, it gets armor penetration reduction, it gets all kinds of great stuff with Vet. So the Panzer IV is your go-to medium tank. It's got a turret, which makes it very different from the Stug over here, which does not have a turret. If you have to be very careful with the Stug when the enemy has things like M10s or Cromwells, because they can just kind of drive around the Stug, and it can't turn fast enough to keep an eye on them, and they'll just get destroyed. So the Stug you might have to play kiting with. If an enemy comes in over here and it's got a fast-moving tank like a Wolverine or a Cromwell, or even a Sherman, you want to start backing up your Stug immediately. And if they try to flank around to the left, well then you kind of turn and back up to the right. You know, and if they start coming around that side, then you turn and flank it back up to the right. But always be backing up, man. Always be backing up with your Stug. Aside from that, it's got a pretty decent front gun. It's got very strong front armor compared to its side and rear armor. So it makes a good support tank. Keep it at the back. Let it do its thing. When enemies show up, back it up. Moving on, we've got the Ostwind here. Ostwind does tremendously huge amounts of damage to infantry and light vehicles, like a Jeep or something. It can just blow it to pieces. It can even damage half-tracks a little bit and armored cars, kinda, but not really. Worthless against tanks. Absolutely worthless against tanks. The other cool feature is that it can potentially shoot down planes from the airborne tree, and it can shoot down paratroopers and paradropped AT guns as they are falling from the sky. It actually is very good at that because the gun can point straight up. So you got to watch out for that. It is a flak panzer. It was designed to take out air-based things like planes. So that's what it's very good at. But it's also fantastic at killing infantry on the ground. Terribly, terribly, terribly bad at killing armor. Does nothing against armor. Just runs away from armor. That's what you got to do. That's the answer. When it sees armor, it runs away. It doesn't kite, it runs. That brings us to the Panther. The Panther is very expensive. 600 manpower and what is it? 110 fuel, I think. Very expensive. Some of the most health of a regular tank in the game. It's basically like a medium heavy tank. It's not like it's not a Tiger. It moves faster than a Tiger, but it doesn't have quite as much health, but it does have a big main gun on it with a very long range, and it has a turret that can turn, and it has speed. So the Panther's a great all-around combination of like a slow, heavy tank and a fast, medium tank. It's not so great at killing infantry as the main gun on the Panzer IV, but when you get that Tier 2 Veterancy upgrade, it will get the LMG on the top going and killing infantry a lot better. But as a general rule, Panthers are an anti-tank platform with some small anti-infantry capabilities. Also good at destroying buildings, turns out. Explosives, yeah, good for that. So, that is all of the units in the Wehrmacht army. Alrighty, so now what we're going to do is show you what you should do as sort of a to get you started strategy for the Wehrmacht in the first couple of minutes in a 1v1. This can kind of apply to a 2v2 as well. So the first thing you do, build another Pioneer Squad. They're cheap and you need more than one. The next thing you do, immediately build a Wehrmacht quarters. And try to build it, not directly next to your base. Build it a little further away, so that it'll be closer to the front line. Step number 3, never play on this piece of map. But step number 3 is actually build a Volksgrenadier. Now, you have a couple of options. You can have this Pioneer Squad that comes out, help build this Wehrmacht quarters, or you can have it go cap. I usually like to have it go cap first. Set up, a set of things for it to cap. Go here, then go there, then go here. With shift cues, hold down your shift key while you're clicking. It'll queue up orders in order that you clicked, and then he'll do them one after a time. Like this, I'm going to tell him to do that. Then he's going to come and cap this. Holding down shift, click this. Holding down shift, click that. Now I can immediately build some Volksgrenadiers from the Wehrmacht quarters. The reason you want Volksgrenadiers rather than anything else here is that a machine gun is very vulnerable by itself. So you usually don't want to have it go out and try and fight by itself. You want it trailing behind a Volksgrenadier squad and then being used to pin the enemy. That's a general good use for a machine gun. Or pin down a choke point you know the enemy is probably going to come try and take. But if you don't know where the enemy is, very dangerous to send out a machine gun by itself. So here's your Volk squad. I'm going to send him out. Then you want to pay attention to your manpower rate. As soon as you get to 250, build yourself that machine gun, because working with a Volksgrenadier squad, a machine gun is a very scary thing. We're going to send the Volks out to engage the enemy. We're going to leave these Pyos to do their capping, do our capping for us, and we're going to send the Volks to do the actual killing, because the Pyos are pretty weak compared to the engineers. Alright, I passed it and I've screwed up, but I've got my machine gun being built now, so I'm not missing too much here. I'm going to go in search of the enemy with my Volksgrenadiers. Remember, Volksgrenadiers are in general better at long range than short range compared to the rifles. So we've got that machine gun coming out. After the machine gun, probably a good idea if you're a new player to go with another Volksgrenadier squad. That's almost always a safe bet, is getting a second Volksgrenadier squad. What that allows you to do is have one back at base reinforcing while the other one's out in the field supporting your machine gun. Because if you only had one Volksgrenadier squad, you would only be able to support that MG as long as your Volksgrenadier wasn't at the back retreating. Oh boy, so this is a map with a lot of houses, which makes you kind of want to get a sniper, but be very careful about snipers against the Americans, because the Americans can easily build a jeep from their barracks, which is what they usually get to counter your sniper. So almost never build a sniper until at least you have a machine gun to support the sniper. So we're going to try and get this machine gun in this building here to support our Volksgrenadiers. And we're going to get another Volk squad, again, because we said before, if you get a second Volk squad, you can take advantage of one going back and retreating while the other one covers the machine gun. Now, this is a very, I don't know, you picked a terrible map here, Rogers, because this is not allowing us to, to demonstrate any of these, what we're talking about. Yeah. But now that one squad is retreating, the other one will be coming out onto the map. Now, machine guns in buildings are obviously very good. Force one of his squads to retreat. And as long as he doesn't do... oh, he can't because there's a wall there. Oh, I forgot how much this map sucked. There we go. Yeah, there's a window over there. You can't hide from me. So we'll be reinforcing this squad back here while squad number 2 comes forward. Now, once we force him to fully retreat, don't be afraid if you know that you've just forced both of his only squads to retreat. Don't be afraid to cap with your machine guns, assuming you've got something in front of them, like a Volk squad. Like I'm going to bring the Volk squad in front of them to provide line of sight, so I know when my machine gun is safe. Versus, uh-oh, enemies are coming. I better stop capping with the MG and jump into a building, for example. Ah, there he is, taking fire. Like we talked about, notice that the MP40 and the Fire Panzerfaust are both not available because we have not gone to Tier 2, which is called Skirmish Phase. And those are upgraded available in the HQ there. So we don't really have a way to get him out of the building here. In this case, I might go Sniper next because we have 2 Wehrmacht squads, and we have 2 Volksgrenadier squads, and we have a... get him in that building. And we have a machine gun to guard the sniper against potential Jeep counterattack. The sniper could also jump into a building to provide some cover against a Jeep, but the Jeep still has very good stats against snipers. So that's about the point where this build order kind of ends. After that, it's very situational. So let's talk about that. After you've built your second Pio, you started capping, you've got your Wehrmacht quarters up, you build a Volks, MG, Volks. That's a good starting setup. Your Pioneers are capping around the map. At some point, you're going to want your Pioneers to retreat in order to build a comp craft center to start getting veterancy. When that is, depends upon the game. But after that, you've got a couple of options. You could build a comp craft center right about this point in the game and get some really early veterancy. Get your infantry, to Vet 2. By the time your Grenadiers come out, they'll already have elite armor, and that's kind of cool to have them out on the field with elite armor. But something more common would be go to Tier 2 at this point. Spends your manpower to go to Tier 2, which costs 200 manpower and 35 fuel. Another thing that you could do is build a second machine gun on a more open map, like an Angeville. Having one MG covering another really makes it a lot harder to flank. So that's one of the things you might want to do on something like that. Another thing you might want to do with your manpower at this point is instead of building squads, build a bunker. Bunkers can be used in a number of different ways. If you've got a choke point, like, you've got a victory point, that's, in a choke point area of the map, you can build a bunker and upgrade it with a machine gun inside. It's going to cost a lot of your early munitions to do so, but it will lock down that part of the map, assuming it can't be flanked, which sometimes you can set that up. At least until they get, M8s or mortars, for the most part, will be the only ways to take that out. Another option is to put a bunker somewhat further recessed from like on this map. I might put it, back in this area or maybe a little bit behind this wall in order to keep it safe, but then upgrade it with a medic station, and that will allow the medics to run out and pick up casualties and run back and give you a fresh grenadier squad once they've picked up 4. So that's a very cool upgrade for the bunker. And so that's something you can use it on. And from there, you kind of got to split off and go to the various directions. So Rogers, there's a bunch of different sort of optimal builds that you could go with the Wehrmacht, but there's a couple of main ones that people usually use with the various trees. So let's talk about the defensive tree. What would you normally go? How would you build your base? Would you build all 4 buildings in order with a defensive tree?
With a defensive tree, no. What I would normally do is I would go tier 1 and a decently long tier 1 opening, and then go... Actually, you know what? In a defensive, you'd probably want to go with a quick tier 2 and start spamming grenadiers with a medic bunker somewhere on the field to constantly be replenishing your numbers. After I've got a good hold on tier 2, I'd probably go with a Kampfkraft Center and get Veterancy 1, and maybe 2. It all depends on how you're doing in the game. And then after that, as time progresses, and based on how you're doing, I would go to tier 4 and get a Panzer Command to either get tanks or Knights Cross based on what I need.
Yeah, tier 2 to 4 is the strat as known. Defensive is a very good ability, especially with bunkers, because this Fortify the Perimeter ability allows you to reinforce around bunkers. So this is a very defensive, crawling type strategy where you get Pack 38s from your tier 2, you get Grenadiers, and you slowly push forward with them and absorb more of the map and try to create a defensive line across parts of the map that give you the victory points and the resources. So tier 3 really doesn't do anything. The Sturm Armory doesn't do anything that tier 2 and 4 can't already do for you. A Stug, for example, kind of replaces a pack, and you can already have access to a pack, and you already have access to Panzerschrecks to guard the pack, and you also have access to machine guns to guard the pack. So you don't need the officer. You don't need the Puma for anti-infantry because you've got Veterancy on your infantry. You're just going to use that at its own contained thing. So instead of spending the resources to build a Sturm Armory, you skip it and go straight to tier 4, where you get things like the Panzer IV and Knights Crossholders, or maybe a Panther if you need the extra anti-tank power. So that is a strategy that allows you to save resources by not going into tier 3 and optimizing your defensive power by getting things like mortars and packs and grenadiers that are very good at defending territory. For Blitzkrieg, this is my favorite doctrine, and this goes very well with a tier 1, 3, 4 strategy. In this strategy, you actually skip tier 2. You don't get packs, you don't get mortars, you don't get half-tracks, which is, upsetting, because mortars are awesome and packs are quite useful, but most importantly, you don't get grenadiers in the tier 1, 3, 4 strategy. Instead, you'll have stormtroopers from your Blitzkrieg tree. Stormtroopers are essentially better versions of grenadiers, so you can use them to replace the grenadier. Then, what you might normally use a mortar for, like to take out an enemy in a building or enemy in enemy emplacement, instead you'll probably use a STA from the Blitzkrieg tree, because it is extremely good at killing buildings and grouped units like a mortar is, but it does it with armor from the front lines. In addition, tier 3 is going to give you access to the Stuz Companion, the Stug, as well as a Puma to take out early infantry pushes. So then you go into tier 4 and you get some other things. So you skip tier 2 because you don't need to get Grenadiers again, and that way you can quickly get a Puma from tier 3. Usually this strategy is combined with a very fast advancement to tier 3 and getting a Puma out on the field before your enemy is ready with anti-armor capability. So you usually have the Puma out on the field for a minute or a minute and a half before your opponent comes out with sticky bombs or probably more likely an M8 or a pack. I'm sorry, not a pack, an AT gun. So lastly, the Terror Doctrine also works very well for the defensive type strategy of 1, 2, 4, because you don't have a replacement for Grenadiers, so you can't skip tier 2 with the Terror Doctrine. However, it can be debatable. You can also go 1, 2, 3, 4 with the Terror Doctrine. There's nothing really bad about that, except if you need that Panther for anti-armor, or the Panzer IV could be really useful, you can skip Tier 3, and, you know, it's not something you necessarily need in order to use it very well. So those are the 3 basic trees. We'll go over the trees a lot more detail later on, but that's a good idea of how to build your base. Always build a comp craft center and always get veterancy. You never leave that out of your build. But you can go 1, 2, 4 in defensive and terror, and 1, 3, 4 in blitz, and skip the second Kriegsbarracks. So that's it for this section here. I hope this enlightens some of you new players on how to get started playing as the Wehrmacht. Did you have fun taking over the whole map with no resistance there, Rogers? Was that fun?
It was a little bit of a blast. I probably I'm an ass. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I expected it of you. I was planning for that. That was all part of my plan. Yeah. All right. Now moving on. Let's see how this all ends, shall we? All right. So that is the Wehrmacht in total. You know, that's everything right there. Do you have anything to add there, Rogers?
Well, I'm a little upset that you fired some artillery into my base. I mean, what's up with that, man?
There's demonstration purposes only. I assumed you understood.
The base is sacred. The base
no,
is
it's
sacred.
not. You read the contract. It's going to require sometimes your base has to blow up. Your ego has to be able to take it. It's right there in the contract.
I never signed that contract.
Yes, you did. You were drunk, remember?
Okay, that might have happened then. Okay, well, charge of the Light Brigade, if I may.
The Light Brigade was on horses.
Well, they've modernized. Attack! God, I wish that War Machine worked.
The Flak Panzer is very good at killing
Kill the Knight's Cross.
You're not going to kill the Knight's Cross. They will kill you.
I'm going to get him. I'm going to get him. There's so many Jeeps, you guys can't...
Oh, no!
Kill the Grenadiers.
They have Shreks, you cannot.
Oh my god.
Jesus, why do they all have ejection seats? What the hell?
It's raining men. Hallelujah, it's raining men. Hey, why don't you salvage all that?
Oh, that's one thing we didn't talk about, isn't it? You can salvage with your pioneers. So here is the Pershing's heavy tank. And as you can see, it's not standing up to German armor. German armor superior, clearly. Oh boy. Get out of here. Let me demonstrate salvage. So actually, one of the other really cool things, because the Wehrmacht are so munitions dependent, if you think about it, you've got the half-track that has munition-based upgrades, you got Volksgrenadiers with MP40s that are munitions-based upgrades, you can build stuff out of bunkers when you build bunkers on the field, which we didn't talk about, but those are very cool. You can build bunkers that have munitions-based upgrades, your Pioneers have munitions-based upgrades in flamethrowers and mine detectors, your Grenadiers and your Stormtroopers both have 2 different very expensive munitions-based upgrades that you're going to need in the game. You need Shreks. Yeah, your half-track has munitions. Everything costs munitions. So what to do if you're out of munitions and you need more? Well, you have this little ability here, Salvage Wrecks, just by right-clicking on the wreck of a vehicle. +5 munitions. And wow. +5 munitions.
Dear God, please drive.
Oh, what's going wrong over here?
He's not going through the hedges. He has heavy crush, right?
He does have heavy crush. He likes those hedges, though. I think he was given specific orders not to damage French, buildings and territory. Now he's driving over the house. Oh my God, that's terrible. So there you go. That's the Wehrmacht, ladies and gentlemen. The abilities abound. And I think that my computer is gone. So it's a good thing that that worked. Bye, everybody. Roger says, see you later. My internet's gone.